What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be updating my Pulverize build here for Season 4 in Diablo 4. If you didn't know, Pulverize just got a massive update and is way better. In fact, I think it's probably one of the best and funnest builds this season now. Now, I will be showing you guys some gameplay footage in just a minute of me clearing a Tier 102 pit with this setup with incredibly bad gear. And the reason why I did it like that is because I wanted to show you guys what this setup was capable of without any real min-maxing of my gear pieces, and also because I've spent most of my time in hardcore this season and I really don't have much on my softcore character. So before we do that, I want to go ahead and show you guys the gear I was using to clear that Tier 102 pit, and I actually think I have a few more tiers left before I have to do anything to the gear, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. So as you can see here, I wasn't joking. We have a regular Godslayer crown with no greater affixes, a regular Insatiable Fury with no greater affixes. We do have a pair of gloves with the affixes we want. We did get lucky and get a pair of pants with the greater affix to armor. No greater affix rolls on the boots, none on the weapon. We're missing a substantial chunk of damage on the amulet because we don't have rings to Envenom or rings to Quick Shift. And then just 2 standard rings with one having a greater affix to Max Life. So now onto some gameplay, and as you guys can see here, we are cruising through a Tier 102 pit, and the way you play this build is to basically use your shape-shifting ability through Claw, as well as Pulverize to build up your Quick Shift and Heightened Senses passives, as well as get the buff from the Shapeshifter glyph that is incorporated into the build to increase your crit chance. Then you utilize your Poison Creeper to pull everything together from your Godslayer crown, and then just burn it down by weaving claw attacks in between your pulverizes to continue to buff up your character with your passives. And then, of course, moving on to the boss, we ended up getting a Drowned Sea Hag, and she's quite tanky, but it did take the better part of the run to clear that boss, and as expected, that's where Pulverize tends to be its weakest when you're bossing. Now, as you guys can see that from the gameplay footage, we did spend a substantial amount of time on the boss, and that is normal for Pulverize. However, I will say when I do manage to get the gear pieces I'm looking for this build, that boss kill time will decrease substantially, and you probably won't see yourself having any resource issues, so you'll be able to spam your Pulverize a lot more. But anyway, now that we've gotten all that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at the build. So for our assigned skills, we're using Pulverize, Claw, Debilitating Roar for our survivability, and then all 3 of the companions, Ravens, Poison Creeper, and Wolves, because we are going to still be using Shepherds instead of Banished Lords. Then for our Spirit Boons, we're running Weariness on the Deer. We are Spirit Bonded into the Eagle, and we're picking up Iron Feather as well as Avian Wrath. For the Wolf, we are going to be using Pack Leader so we can use our Poison Creeper more as well as get as much out of our Clarity buff as possible. And then for the Snake, we're going to be running Obsidian Slam, and this has got a nice buff, so it's not every 20th kill, it's now every 10th kill we get a guaranteed overpower. Moving down to our gear pieces, and like with the previous build video, I do have multiple versions here. So I have an Uber variation as well as an Uber variation with damage to close enemies. So for this setup, I have Godslayer Crown, which is amazing for this build, Insatiable Fury, then I'm running Aspect of the Earth Sign Horror, then Aspect of Might on the pants. Then we have the Aspect of Quicksand on the boots, and this is to help with the Aspect of Umbral to generate resources for us until we have the Ring of Starless Skies as well as a greater affix on Spirit Return on our boots. And then on to our weapon, we're running Shockwave Aspect, and then for our amulet, we're running the Trusty Shepherd's Aspect. For our first ring, running Aspect of Stampede, and then for the second ring, like I previously mentioned, we are running Aspect of the Umbral to maintain our resources while we're clearing the first parts of the pit. Now for the gear affixes, if you are running the Godslayer Crown, even with the Uber variation, because I really love the Godslayer Crown, it is just so good on this build, do try to get your Masterworking crits into cooldown reduction. That way you can keep your Debilitating Roar up more consistently. Then for the Insatiable Fury chest piece, go ahead and try to get as many crits into the overpowered damage or into your damage reduction while fortified. For the gloves, we're running Ranks to Pulverize, Critical Strike Chance, and Critical Strike Damage, and you can flex that Critical Strike Damage for Willpower if you prefer. And then for the Temperings, we're running Damage to Distant Enemies as well as a chance to freeze. Now this can be any CC except for slow, so Immobilize and Stun will be perfectly fine here and on any other gear pieces you'd like to run it on. Then on the pants, we're running Max Life, Armor, Willpower, and then Debilitating Roar duration. And then for the boots, we're going to have Max Life, Spirit per second, and Willpower. And then we're going to be picking up the Digigrade Gate ranks. And then on the weapon, we're going Willpower, Max Life, Critical Strike damage. And we are running a 2-handed staff to buff up our Earth and Devastation node. And then we're picking up more damage to distant enemies as well as Pulverize size. Then for our amulet, we're running max life, crit strike chance, and ranks to envenom, and then picking up more Digigrade gate ranks here, as well as damage to distant enemies. Now you can go ahead and flex out that max life for something else like quick shift to boost up your damage more if you'd like to, but I like to have the max life just to give me that buffer so that way I'm not constantly dying in the pit. And then for both of our rings, we're running crit strike chance, crit strike damage, max life, damage to distant enemies, and resource cost reduction. Then for the Uber variation, we're just running a Harlequin Crest as well as a Ring of Starless Skies. Now, when you get your Ring of Starless Skies, it's going to increase your sustain by a substantial margin. And honestly, this is probably the biggest upgrade for the build overall. So if you have to choose between the two, I would highly recommend you pick up a Ring of Starless Skies first and just use your Godslayer crown instead of a Harlequin Crest, because I don't think you're going to see that big of a difference between those two helmets. Moving down to gems, running emeralds on the weapon, rubies on the armor, and diamonds on the jewelry pieces. Moving on to our skill tree, we're using 1 point claw into enhanced claw. Then onto our core skills, we're using 5 points pulverize into raging pulverize, and then 1 point heart of the wild and 3 points wild impulses. From there, we're going down to our defensive tree, grabbing 5 points in Debilitating Roar, as well as moving into Preserving Debilitating Roar, and then picking up 2 points in Ancestral Fortitude. After that, on our companion tree, we're grabbing 1 point Wolves, 1 point Poison Creeper into Brutal Poison Creeper, and then 1 point Ravens into Brutal Ravens, followed by 3 points Clarity and 3 points Nature's Reach. Now, the interesting thing here is when you get a Shaco, aka Harlequin Crest, you can go ahead and take this point out of Wolves because you won't need it and put it somewhere else. Also, if you do manage to get a lot of greater affix rolls to crit chance on your gear pieces, you can also pull out the 2 Poison Creeper passive points here, because you will easily reach 100% crit chance with this setup between Shapeshift Glyph as well as the Clarity buff, that you won't actually need these 2 skill points there, and move them into different passives to increase your damage a little bit more. Moving on to our Wrath tree, we're grabbing 1 point Crushing Earth, 1 point Safeguard, and 3 point Stone Guard, followed by 1 point Mending, as well as 3 points into Provocation, and then 1 point Neurotoxin into 3 points in Venom. After that, we're grabbing 3 points in Defiance in our Ultimate tree, as well as 3 points Quick Shift and 3 points Heightened Senses. And then for our key passive, we are going to be running Bestial Rampage. Now onto our Paragon board, and this is where we made most of our adjustments. So the starter board is exactly the same, so we're using Outmatch here with the same setup. Then we're running the Survival Instinct board with Dominate here, because this is going to be kind of a hybrid between Overpower as well as crit damage. Then onto our Constricting Tendrils board, we're running the Shapeshifter Glyph here. And then moving down to Ancestral Guidance for our 4th board, as well as slotting in Werebear. Now, if you are running the close version of this build, you can slot in Fang and Claw here to give yourself a bigger multiplier. Then moving on to our 5th board, that is the Earth and Devastation board, and we are slotting in Tectonic. And something else that's worth mentioning is that with this Paragon board setup, as well as using a 2-hand staff, I have the Earth and Devastation node sitting at 38% out of 40%, so almost capped, and there really is no need to swap out a Tempering on one of your gear pieces to a roll of damage to crowd control enemies, because that 2 extra percent really would not be worth it. Then on to our 6th board, that is the Thunderstruck board, and we are going to be slotting in Spirit here. And then from there, we're going to be entering back into the Constricting Tendrils board and picking up this damage to crowd control enemies, as well as another max life magic node. However, we do not have the extra point to go ahead and pick up this very last maximum life magic node, so don't pay attention to this 1 point available, because we really do not have 1 point available. This is something I noticed from the comments section of my previous video. So for some reason, it's showing that I have a point left in Mobilytics, but I actually don't. So this should be perfect the way it is, and you guys should not be short 1 Paragon board point. But anyways, guys, that's really it for the video. I am super happy with the way this build is functioning, even though I have really bad gear pieces. And I'm actually going to spend the better part of this week farming out the gear pieces, as well as getting enough gold that I can reset my gear pieces if I do miss a masterworking crit on the affix I'd prefer. I'm also going to be finishing up my Pure Companion build, as well as working on a hardcore Stormclaw build, so do be on the lookout for those things. And also, they have announced a brand new Season 5 PTR that I am going to be getting into. So we will be live streaming the Season 5 PTR Campfire Chat on June 21st. So if you are interested, you can tune into that. And if you do have any questions regarding this build, go ahead and leave your questions in the comments section. And I will be streaming periodically throughout the week, so if you do see me on, you can always stop by and go ahead and post your question in the chat, and I'll answer it as soon as I see it. But anyways, guys, as always, I hope you're having a great day or a great night, depending on wherever you're from, and peace out, guys. I will see you in the next one.